This EV cab company makes more than 550 crores in annual revenue and has become the new favorite for cab users in Delhi and Bangalore. In roughly 5 years, BluSmart has become Southeast Asia's biggest EV ride-hailing company and is giving Ola and Uber a run for their money. A company that started on Uber's own app a few years ago and is now coming for a big piece of pie in India's 58,000 crore ride-hailing market. And in this episode, we'll dive not only into the insights they have used to crack the brutal industry with giants in place, but also discuss how their model is extremely difficult to what other players are building in the ecosystem. But if you're new to the channel, then hello, you've landed at GrowthX, an invite-only community over 3,000 members who are product, marketing, business leaders, and also founders from the startup ecosystem. See, BluSmart's story goes back to 2019 when it was started by 3 co-founders, Puneet Goyal, Anmol Jaggi, and Puneet Jaggi. All of them have had 10 to 12 years of extensive experience in the renewable energy space in India. In fact, Anmol and Puneet Jaggi are co-founders of Gensol Group, an energy company that made roughly 900 crores in revenue in FY24. At this time, Puneet Goyal had already founded PLG Power Limited, a company that produces solar panels, but this eventually had to shut down due to a big halt in solar manufacturing space. This tough time that Puneet was seeing helped him see a wide space in the market that no one else was able to see. He managed to make sense of 2 big trends happening in India. One was the rising dependence on cabs like Ola and Uber and the growth of ride-hailing market, and the other one was the rise of transition to electric vehicles. And he later convinced Jaggi brothers and started on to take a bold move of entering the ride-hailing market, but with only EV cars. They didn't want to build a cab company, but an energy company, and we'll dig deeper into this. And this was super bold, by the way, because breaking the oligopoly of Uber and Ola was almost next to impossible. They could have easily defeated them on price, marketing, or done anything literally to stop BluSmart. Plus, both EV and ride-hailing are brutal markets on their own, with own set of nuances in terms of tech, workforce, assets, or even policies. In fact, ride-hailing market is so competitive that Ola and Uber are still taking their time to approach profitability. But cut to 5 years later, BluSmart now has a scale of 7,600 cars, a brand loyalty, good investors, and in fact also aiming profitability by 2026, which brings me to the very first insight they used, which is a non-aggregator model. Look, if you've ever used Uber or Ola, they're like the Airbnb of cars. They don't own a single car and just do the matchmaking. It's actually the drivers who own the vehicles. And this is the concept that Uber brought to the world back in the day. In this concept, drivers bring their own vehicles, get registered as an Ola or Uber driver, follow certain guidelines, and then start working on the commission basis of 20 to 30%. Through this, Ola and Uber gets access to thousands and thousands of cars at once, more customers, and the ultimate advantage of scale. By the way, Uber and Ola have now brought a subscription-based plan for their riders after seeing Namma Yazri and Rapido. So instead of charging riders on each transaction, let's say 20 to 30% on each ride, they're now charging a flat subscription fee, which is a daily or a weekly fee of, let's say, 1,000 rupees, for example. But this is only for the auto fleet as of now. See, this entire setup that I talked about has caused a lot of problems for the drivers and eventually for the customers as well. Because the entire onus of owning, servicing, and running the cab comes down to the driver. Plus, most of the drivers are coming from some of the most economically backward backgrounds, and they have no option but to take loans and then pay EMIs. Plus, they are also getting a fare which is decided by their aggregators and also eventually giving a commission share of their hard work to these aggregators. The result? They would cancel a lot of rides, at times be rude to customers, and also not care about the customer experience. And you must have seen it yourself. Times when you have to have a heated argument over tiny issues like turning on the AC or stopping for a gas refill. Some drivers don't care because at the end of the day, it's their cars and it's their rules. This became the ultimate insight for BluSmart. They wanted to solve for the customers by solving for these drivers. That's why they innovated a different model completely, which is an asset-heavy model where the driver would be an employee and would be paid a fixed sum of money per day, assuring a certain level of salary. In fact, these fixed salaries ranged from 25,000 to 30,000, which was better than earlier salaries that they were getting. By this, they were able to get many drivers as their employees. In fact, 40% of their drivers are ex-Ola or Uber employees. So basically, BluSmart would lease all the modern EV cars, where they would pay a monthly rent for these cars and operate them like BluSmart branded taxis all across the city. Here, drivers would be focused on only one thing, which is making sure that the customer experience is top-notch as they leave all the asset responsibilities to the company. That's why BluSmart was able to offer their customers a very unique policy, which is a no surge and no cancellation policy, which eventually became the ultimate hook for customers to try BluSmart. And there's more to this customer hook, but before we get into that, what's super interesting is that GrowthX capstone team literally built a capstone strategy for BluSmart that was so realistic that they presented it to the entire startup ecosystem at the GrowthX demo day last year. This strategy runs literally into hundreds of pages and it's super in-depth. But because we love you, we are giving away a small portion of this exclusive document to our YT fam. In it, you'll find insights about BluSmart's users, in-depth industry research, and the user insight behind their massive growth. By the way, did I mention the beast? The growth model that the team used. The link to access it is in the comments, and it's free by the way, so happy learning. Back to the hook that BluSmart used. See, this non-aggregator strategy made sure that the drivers started caring about the customers and eventually brought more customer safety to the table. How? Well, BluSmart could actually track every asset and every EV by having a tracking device placed in the cars. For context, in Ola and Uber, the location detection is only done by phones of drivers or customers. But in BluSmart, there's not just the phones, but also the tracking devices that are tracking the movement of the cars. So the safety angle made sure that especially female customers became more comfortable with cabs, as they could even install the panic buttons in each car. By the way, this also brought two more things to the table. One was that drivers get extremely trained on how to work on EV setup, as most of the drivers had never worked on EVs themselves. There's also a very interesting angle to their operations as they have started giving more and more jobs to women. As a result, roughly 50% of their workforce is women. Coming back to the next insight, which is the ecosystem insight. And this one is very interesting because this is very counterintuitive to a usual approach that anyone could actually think of. They are not building a ride-hailing company, but an energy company. See, BluSmart has three verticals to their business, each operating as a different business altogether. There's BluSmart Fleet, BluSmart Tech, and BluSmart Charge. Fleet is the ride-hailing business. Tech is the app business that controls all the tech and intellectual properties they have. And the third one is the Charge, which is the charging infrastructure under which they have roughly 50 charging hubs covering 20 lakh square feet of area. And this is the most exciting part of the business that very few people are looking at, and I'll tell you why. See, EVs have a very interesting chicken and egg problem. Currently, the 4-vehicle penetration in India is at 2.4%, and if you want to scale it to let's say 10%, along with cars, you would need one more thing to make it happen that very few people think about. This is the EV charging infra, which at the moment we only have about 12 to 15,000 stations in India as per the government data. And to meet the ideal ratio 1 to 40, which means that for every 40 EVs you would need 1 chargers, India needs to install more than 4 lakh charging points at the moment. And it's pretty similar to the case of airports and airplanes, right? To increase the number of airplanes, you need an airport, and to increase the utilization of an airport, you need more airplanes. Because if proper utilization of an asset, be it airplanes or airports, is not being done, it literally means losing money in an asset-heavy business. So the chain that BluSmart wants to run is simple. Make sure that all 7,600 EV cars have to be run enough so that they can get the cost advantage of owning an EV vehicle instead of an ICE vehicle and get the benefit of economies of scale. Support the charging of these EV cars with their own charging hubs to make sure that every vehicle is charged from the nearby station as soon as it gets out of battery, and then later sell the charging as a service to other cars in future whilst they have the expertise of owning and operating the charging infra and completely serving their own fleet as well. So this business of charging infrastructure will only grow with the growing Indian EV story, and this will become the ultimate moat for them to take on any company that wants to get in this same model. But what's interesting to see is how they execute this, because this is another ballgame altogether. And also it's super capex heavy that can actually take a lot of hit on the company's financials. So it'll be very interesting to see how it turns out. So while we have discussed their asset heavy model and also the multi-vertical game plan, let's understand their approach to get users, which is very useful for any startup that wants to enter a competitive market. And this is the insight of going niche and then going wide. See, one of the biggest insights for any business that wants to enter an already established market is by becoming not a me-too product or service. Because if you try to please everyone at the start, you would end up serving no one, and BluSmart understood it really well. They understood the intensive scale of Ola and Uber. Ola at the time is present in 250 cities in India, and Uber is present in 125 cities. And they are at a super huge scale and own up roughly 50 to 70% of the entire e-ride hailing market. BluSmart is roughly 2% of the size of its rival, and that's why they've strategically gone after only two markets, Bangalore and Delhi NCR. That's all. They chose these two markets because the users here would care about the USP of no cancellation and no surge, and would happily pay a premium of, let's say, 100 to 200 rupees more if needed. And just imagine, you have a flight tomorrow and you want to book a cab, and you never know, it might rain tomorrow or it might be a busy weekend and it might be very difficult for you to find a cab. Then what would you do? You would any day prefer a cab where you can book the cab in advance and not be anxious about your trip. This is the niche problem that they started solving. They started by doing only airport rides in Delhi NCR first, later started doing advanced booking rides all across the city, and then they expanded into Bangalore. They found that 68% of India's entire mobility market exists in Delhi NCR, Bangalore and Mumbai. By the way, here are the top 6 cities where most people used Uber in 2023. It can be super useful for you in case you want to create any business around this ecosystem. Also, see, they only recently entered the on-demand service game where users can open the app and get the cab right away, which is a very deliberate move by them because they want to solve for one thing first and only then expand. And just like any other growing startup in the space, they have been only bullish on cabs and not focusing on two-wheelers or three-wheelers. This is something that other startups in the space have also done very smartly, like Rapido did by focusing only on two-vehicle space, Namme did by entering the auto space, and Chauffeur did by entering the luxury car space. Every player in this industry is picking one area of focus and eating the market share from there on. By the way, with their size, they also have an advantage of being an EV-first company, which can play a big difference in coming years as the government now is super bullish on making sure that more and more vehicles are electric with FAME policies, and India has taken a target of 30% of all vehicles sold in the country to be electric by 2030. And I'll tell you why it's a great edge. Well, because other players have not focused on EV car fleets as much as them. So let's say Ola and Uber have taken targets of bringing more electric vehicles into their fleet, but there are challenges. For example, for Ola, it would be easier to get electric two-wheelers first over four-wheelers, as they are making the scooters themselves and would have to figure out the infra and also the training of drivers for EV cars. On the other hand, Uber would also have to solve for all of these factors and make some changes in their playbook for India. So these were the insights that have made BluSmart a very unique startup story and some frameworks that you can apply to enter a market that has established giants already to create a space for yourself. If you like this video, you will definitely love the last video we did on Comet, where we cover insights on how Comet became a 160 crore sneaker startup. I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.